The year was 1884, and the Montana Territory was as wild as it was wide out near the edge of nowhere, tucked between red blushed hills and fading fence Linneset. A piece of land called Ember Ridget wasn't the biggest ranch or the best bit to the sisters. It was everything. Willa Alderwood the elder had hands tougher than leather and a heart built from stone and sorrow. Since their father died, she'd been running Ember Ridge alone. Just her sister, and land that asked more than it gave. Who don't need help, she'd always say, to just need more daylight. But even daylight was starting to run out. Josie, younger, brighter, fought the land with the same grit, but carried a different kind of burden. She was the dreamer, the laugher, but even her light dimmed when debts piled up and the roof sagged lower each storm. We can't patch forever, Will Ash said one evening. We're running out of rope, and luck thee sold the wagon. Then the silver thee stopped hiring hands. 2 seasons Agath heard had thinned, and their backs had bent, but still they stayed. You thinking what I'm thinking? Josie asked one night, her fingers tracing a folded newspaper. Harry doubted. Willa muttered. Who could send letters? Willa looked up, brow raised. Western men seek marriage and honest workable discreetity. To travel letters welcome Melly order husbands. Josie said, half laughing, half praying. You can be serious, we need help, said strong hands, reliable ones, and maybe someone who'd stay. Some choices are made in love, others in desperation, but on Ember Ridge the lines had begun to blur, and so to women with more dust than dreams left in their boots picked up pens, not for fairy tales, not for rescue, but for a chance to hold on to the land that had raised them. A letter can carry more than words. Sometimes it carries the last hope of a family or a future, and so the sisters wrote. Josie sat at the kitchen table, ink smudged on her fingers, a fire down to embers. Dear stranger, she began, this land is rough. We don't offer much but work, weather, and loyalty. If you can handle all 3, Mabe will have something worth sharing. Her handwriting was graceful, but unsure, like her heart hadn't decided if this was brave or foolish. Willa had written nothing. She stared out the window at the empty yard, the broken gate still hanging loose. Finally she sat, picked up the pen, and began without flurry. She own a ranch. It needs work. You'll get food or roof, and the truth, it's more than some can promise. Ash paused, then added almost reluctantly, and I won't ask for more than I'd give myself. The road into town without speaking much. The wind was biting the streets. Half-frozen. The postmaster didn't ask questions. Shushed stamped the envelopes, then offered a rare nod. You gals sure about this? He is sked. No, Josie said honestly, but we're out of other options. Days crawled by. Willa rebuilt the water trough. Josie stitched the last of their winter coats. Meals grew simpler, the sky grayer every few days. One of them made the ride into town, hoping something might be waiting at the post office, and each evening they sat by the fire, wondering if hope had a return address. Then, just after the first snow, they found 2 letters tucked behind the counter, waiting like answers to questions they'd barely dared to. A scone bore strong, blocky handwriting, feather curved like a story waiting to be told. They didn't open them right away. They just stood on the porch holding the envelopes like they might bite some letters. Change Livis. These would shape more than just the season, because buried in ink under every line and signature was one shared promise. Was coming, and then the train came. The station was small wood planks, a bent sign, and a bench that creaked in the wine bit. When that train hissed to a stop, sisters stood straight, holders squared hearts, holding still. 12 men stepped off, one quiet, one smiling. First was Colth, moved like a man used to carrying weight and keeping quiet about it. Willa, he asked, voice low, eyes steady. That's me, she said. You are here to work and stay. I fime. Wantage didn't smile, just nodded. On the second was Jack, quicker on his feet, boots polished. Smileready, Josie? He asked, removing his hat. You are even braver in person. You haven't seen me with a pitchfork. Yesh, said, arms folded. He looked forward to it. Jack replied, a bit too smooth. Josie didn't laugh, but her eyes flicked toward his boots. To Clint there was no celebration, just 2 extra plates at the table. 12 beds made to pairs of eyes, watching every move. They weren't looking for husbands, they were looking for help that would stay and trust. That would take more than a handshake. Holt started with the West fence. No questions, no instructions needed. You've done this before, Willa observed. Most fences don't care who built them, just whether they hold. He Sage didn't answer, but she handed him another post. Jack tried to unfreeze the water trough, slipping more than once. You want help? Josie asked. That obvious? He replied, hands red from cold. Just wondering if you've ever worked outdoors before. Eve worked, just not like this, and you'd better learn fast. First impressions weren't bad. But they weren't magic Ithrin, that was just fine. Ember Ridge didn't need magis, it needed men who meant what they said, and women strong enough to wait and see if they did. 12 weeks passed, and the rhythm of life on Ember Ridge began to shift. Colt worked without complaint. Jack tried hard, laughed loud, and slipped often, but for all their effort, something stayed beneath the surface. Willa was sorting tools when a slip of paper fell from Colt's saddlebag, an old military dispatch folded tight and stained with sweat. She didn't open it at first, but something in her chest told her the truth was long overdue. Inside, she found the words dishonorable discharge, charges insubordination, desertion in time of command. Her hands didn't tremble, but her breath held caught in her throat like dust. Before a storm you served, she said, and Lefty left the war, not the men. Colt Answerity was ordered to do things that broke what was left of me, and now you're here asking to stay with that in your bag. I'm not asking for anything, Colt replied. I just wanted to build something right for Ansesh. Looked at him jaw tight, then handed the paper back. Fix the north fence by morning, said, then we'll see where we stand. He nodded. One see no argument, no defense in town. Josie picked up feed nails and a letter addressed to Jack, delivered to Ember Ridge. She didn't open it, but she handed it to him that night at supper. It's from my sister, he said finally. To kid, she's been gone winter setting and she wants me home. And Josie asked. I told her I'd think on it. You already thought on it, didn't you? Jack looked down, folded the letter again. I came here to start something new, but she needs me. She always hasn't. I don't. Josie escaped, her voice soft but firm. Jack looked at her, then charm in his eyes. Just wait, you do. But I don't know if I can be two things at once. The truth didn't break Ember Ridge bit. It changed the air, for Willa Trust now carried a name. She hadn't spoken fully yet. For Josie I'd carried the fear of being second place to someone else's obligation, and for the men he stood now where the ground could shift beneath their boots. Snow came down harder after that, not blizzards, just steady enough to settle into the bones and test what stayed standing. When the ground turned quiet, Colt was already working when Willa stepped outside, boots and Frost's hands raw, same rhythm as always. But she didn't look at the Gatesh, looked at him. You ever plan on running again? She asked. Not unless you tell me to, said without flinching. You still carry that paper every day? Then maybe it's time you stop letting it define you, she said, and start showing me who you are now. Colt looked up, eyes steady. That's the only reason I'm here. Josie didn't wait for Jack to come find her. She didn't need rescuing, but when he showed up head in hand, she gave him a glance that meant this better. Materi told my sister I'd stay here. Jack said that I'd send money when I could, that I can't be into places at once, and I've made my choice. Took you long enough, Josie said, not looking at him. I thought leaving meant strength, turns out staying. Dosh finally met his ICU. Sure, no, he admitted, but I want to find out with you. Josie nodded slowly, then help me stack the feed. Blessing not doing it alone. He stepped beside her without hesitation. That night the sisters sat shoulder to shoulder on the porch. Swing, no music, no words for a while. You still think we were foolish? Josie asked quietly. Think we were desperate? Willa answered, and brave. Sometimes those come together. Do you think they'll stay? Willa glanced toward the barn. Lantern still burned. Incidentally, shadows moved, neither in a hurry to leave. I think they're starting to understand what it means to stay. Trust takes time, forgiveness longer, but some fences aren't mended with nails alone. Sometimes it takes showing up day after day until the land and the hearts on it believe you mean to stay. Winter held Ember Ridge fast, blanketing the land in heavy white, but somehow life pressed on sturdier than before. Fences stood firm under the weight. The firewood stack grew talon for onset. The sky above Ember Ridge felt like a roof instead of a warning. Colt walked beside Willa, not ahead, not behind. You ever feel like you belong somewhere? He has sked. Not often, she said, but lately I forget to wonder. They stopped near the edge of the Ridgeu. Still carrying that paper? She asked. No, he said, buried it last week behind the barn. Willa smiled, then quiet, real, and unguarded. Jack didn't burn the biscuits, Josie only teased him. Once. You still looking for reasons to stay? She asked. No, he replied, I found one. Just one. Okay, maybe two. She handed him the butter with a laughy. Cleared the barn days in advance, sweeping out the hay and hanging lanterns from every beam. Neighbors arrived with planks of wood for extra tables, patchwork quilts for the walls, and hands quick to build a dance floor. From old floorboards a circuit rider preacher came with thundle and kind-eyed, his Bible tucked into a satchel worn thin from miles of dust and prayer. It wasn't fancy, it wasn't flawless, but it was perfect for Ember Ridge's barn. smelled of warm wood cinnamon pies and the sharp bite of winter. Outsideth rafters glittered with tiny icicle-soiled lanterns glowed gold against. The rough-waltzed preacher stood at the front by the stall, gates draped with pine boughs and a single cotton ribbon Neverione gathered close bundled in coats, and shawl's breath fogging in the cold air, smiles warming their facciajuela, walked slowly down the cleared aisle, her dress simple and soft as sprig of dried lavender. Panetto her collar Colt met her at the front, boots, polished hair, brushed back, face open and steady. The preacher spoke simple words. Willito, you take this man to walk beside you through hard seasons and good? I do, she said, her voice clear and sure. Colt, though you take this woman to stand with you come storm or sun? I do, Colt said, squeezing her hand. When the preacher nodded, Colt leaned down, brushed a slow, reverent kiss to Willa's lips and rested his forehead against hers just for a moment. Then it was Josie's turn, radiant, lawing through her nerves. Jack couldn't stop smiling as he met her. Halfway down the aisle, the preacher asked Josieto, you take this man come dust or snow? Only if he promises not to outdance Mesh, said loud enough to make the crowd chuckle. Jack, do you take this woman come sunrise or storm? With everything I have, Jack answered, eyes locked on her. Their kiss was quicker, lighter, but full of promising. The way Jack dipped her back just a little sent a roar of laughter through the barn afterward. Fiddle music sparked up from a corner and boots thudded on the makeshift floortables, groaned under the weight of bread pies and roasted meats. Willa and Colt danced slow, almost shy at first. Josie and Jack spun and laughed until they stumbled into chairs. Snibbers clapped shoulders, passed Sitter and told stories deep into the night. The cottonwood tree outside bent with the wine bed inside. Ember Ridge stood stronger than Averno. Fairy tales here, just promises built plank by plank, though by vow, not easy, net perfect but real, and that is how love lasted at Ember Ridge.